The following presentation is brought to you by the Realm Network.
He's controversial.
20, 30, 40, 50 years from now,
He's outspoken.
you will tell your kids and your grandkids and your great-great-grandkids
And he tells it like it is.
that you watched a great athlete named the Franchise, and he was the greatest world's heavyweight champion of all time.
He is the franchise Shane Douglas, and you are listening to the Triple Threat Podcast. Prepare to get your ass franchised.
In the tradition of Jack Briscoe, of Dory Funk Jr., of Terry Funk, the man who'll never die. From the Harley Races to the Barry Windham to the Ric Flairs. And they can all kiss my ass. Because the franchise, Shane Douglas, is the man who ignites the new flame of the sport of professional wrestling.
All right, let's get it going right here, right now. This is the Triple Threat Podcast being brought to you today and powered on Vince Russo's The Brand as part of the Realm Network. If you didn't know by now, my name is Chad, and as always, usually, we're joined here by my tag team partner, the one and only JP John Paz, but JP on assignment, so taking care of some two-man power trip of wrestling business. But that doesn't stop us as I welcome in the man himself, the former ECW world champion. And if you were following Twitter the other day, the man that started the revolution, the one and only franchise Shane Douglas. Shane, welcome in here to episode number 97.
Man, it's getting almost as old as we are, right? It's getting close. Big number 100 right around the corner. I'm trying to think of like how I'm going to do my hair, maybe purple or like a green stripe right down the middle. What do you think for number 100?
100 would be great. I'm thinking maybe you could go back to the mullet from the from the Dynamic Dude days. Get some tie dye, a skateboard. The mullets. I mean, you guys wore a lot of neon colors, so maybe we could go back to the neon.
All the cool shit, mullets, skateboards, neon colors. Can't go wrong with that, brother.
I hear it's the choice of a new generation. That's from what I understand.
Yeah, something like that.
So we're here for episode number 97. This is our second video episode. All I got to say is the listeners of the brand, Mr. Russo himself, please thank us for this because this has been a friggin' nightmare getting this thing put together. But again, we shall overcome. We are back here for another video episode. And Shane, man, coming off a great response to the first one. We had a great first video episode with the three of us. I can't say, we had a couple hiccups, but I can't say it was anything bad. It was very well done. And I think it was very well received. And I was very happy with the finished product.
Yeah, look, I've gotten a lot of messages both on Twitter and my texts and emails. As busy, I've been working on something else, a little side project. It's been sucking an incredible amount of time, but yeah, I've been getting. In fact, I went to the grocery store yesterday and had somebody, a fan, come up and say that they had seen it and were impressed with it, and so good things. And then we also should tell the fans we've also taken another step without revealing too much, but we may be having some. We had a great phone conference earlier this week, and hopefully some bigger news coming behind that.
Yeah, absolutely. Some people may be getting involved with the podcast, which will be very beneficial to the listeners, and hopefully you stay tuned. And some of that marketing will be coming your way instead of the subliminal marketing. I'll just kind of do one of these. That's what we call subliminal marketing.
Do that one more time. I mean, that's good. That's a good visual. There we go. Do a finger with it. Yeah.
Look at that.
One more time. I'll make it look like
right here, right there.
Yeah.
The classic franchise logo T-shirt. We talk about it at the end of the show. Well, guess what? This is subliminal advertising. I'm going to be wearing it this week. I'm probably going to wear it every week. It's funny, starting to do the shows with you when we're at, different conventions and this and that. I've amassed quite the Shane Douglas wardrobe. So I kind of fall into kind of like how you do, I'm sure, when you go to the ring. I got my choices here that I can kind of throw on a daily basis.
You got gold and black.
Yes.
You got black and gold.
Yes.
You got black and black.
Yes.
Once in a while, some gold and gold.
Yes.
Beyond that, polka dots, stripes, purples, fuchsias, chartreuses. I'm not so sure about all those.
Again, go back to the dynamic dude days. Some of that.
Yeah.
So, hey, you know what I actually have too, and this is available on the Pro Wrestling Tees /franchise store. The the very coveted Dean Douglas T-shirt, which I know you weren't that happy about, but still, it's out there. It's out there. If people want to wear it.
I would love to see an accounting of that page to see how many of those they've sold. Probably about as many as Vince did.
Hey, he never gave it a chance. If he marketed those baby blue T-shirts, you never know. You could have had a lot of kids getting beat up, in the schoolyard, getting their underwear pulled over their head.
There's nothing that strikes fear in the hearts of baby faces more than a powder puff blue singlet. That's a sure heat getter, Vince.
See, I think of you, I think of Dean Douglas, but I also think of Rick Martel. Rick Martel had the powder blue tights, but he was a heel too, so I don't know what he's trying to, what he's accomplishing with that.
Louis Spicoli.
Yeah.
Donnas.
The Body Donnas, yeah.
It was like, I think it must have had like a fire sale or something in like the New York, Connecticut area on powder puff blue material, and figured they would. Vince figured he could change the market, and boy, did he. That's that genius at work.
The black and gold, I mean, no matter where you go, people obviously know it's synonymous with Pittsburgh. So for somebody like me who wears blue and orange everywhere that I go, it's kind of a clash. But we make it work. That's the way it goes.
That's right. It's but look, this, as I always say in the ring, and mean it, about 100% shoot, maybe 99.7. But like when I was living in Florida back in the early 2000s, there was when we went to the Super Bowl. I think it was 2006. The Super Bowl against was that Seattle? I think
might have been.
And so my brother-in-law was down, and we went to a local sports bar, and this is in Sarasota, Florida, mind you. And we walk in, they big sign outside, 50 televisions, blah, blah, blah. We walk in, and, as soon as you walk in, there's a little ante room, like off to the side, where they had like 4 or 5 TVs that were tuned around the different other playoff games. And 45 of the TVs around the sports bar in Sarasota, Florida, were tuned to the Pittsburgh Steelers games.
Wow.
So it's epidemic everywhere you go around the world. People love Pittsburgh.
Hey, it's an epidemic, but so is the measles. So you know what? Yeah.
The flu of 18, right?
Exactly. Well, hey, look, we're coming off a big Father's Day weekend.
Yes.
It was a great weekend. The weather was beautiful here in Virginia. I'm sure in Pittsburgh probably wasn't that much different. But you know what? There was something I wanted to point out to you, and I know you were able to jump on tonight before we were recording this, which we're recording on Thursday. And I threw up a tweet that I had sent you in a text message with John. And it was just simply, it was a picture that I had you sign for us last September. And it's from the NWA title tournament, just as you're about to look up to the heavens and speak to your father right in the middle of the ring.
Yeah.
And Shane, all I did was just tweet the picture and just kind of leave it. And the responses started to come in. And people were starting to react to it. But just, your usual retweets, your likes, your this, your that, whatever. Yeah. But then slowly but surely, people started to pick up the whole speech. And one tweet was the next part of the speech after what I had posted. And then the one after that was the next part. And then the one after that was the next part. So I just thought that was really cool on Father's Day with how much that promo means to not only your career, but obviously the connection with your father.
Sure.
I just thought that was so cool. That was that's why, you got to love wrestling fans. They're so passionate. They're so knowledgeable. And to pick up on that, can't deny it.
Well, incredible because, we had like in the call that we had, the teleconference call we had earlier this week, that was one of the things that had gotten asked. Talking about my dad and By the way, had just a really incredibly cool Father's Day with my boys, and I hope everybody else did as well. It was just an incredible day. Um, to see like what my oldest son, the card that he had given me had, it said things in me that really brought a tear to my eye. That stuff that you don't think an 18-year-old or anybody else is thinking. But pretty much the way I felt growing up once I became a man and understood about my dad. And so, those things that you may not think are being handed down or being picked up by the kids, they certainly are. And, like for me and my dad, without beating that dead horse of what it meant to me. When I say "Here we go, Dad," that wasn't a pre-planned line. That was, everybody knows that follows my career. I never wrote scripts, or I'd see people in the back that have papers and they're walking around, or later, everybody walked around with the script that the company gave them. I just had a general idea what I wanted to talk about, and at the moment I said that, when you watch that video playback, this as I'm walking towards the camera, I said, "Here we go, Dad." My dad had died a little more than a year before that, and it was like, for the first time in my life, it congealed like what my dad was teaching me growing up, and the little sayings and phrases and teachings that he would give. So then to see, like you said, with the fans uh, picking up on that and being able to, 25 years later, uh, write it out like that in thread fashion is incredible to me. And it gets back to the beginning when we were talking about the call with the earlier this week with the podcast and potential people coming on, was the connection, and I brought it up immediately to them, was the amazing connection that wrestling fans have with the product, with their heroes and people that they love to boo. Uh, it's been easy for me because of the length of my time in the business, but to look back and see that anybody remembers verbatim some promo from 25 years ago astounds me. And it's really a testament to wrestling fans and to the industry that it has that kind of connection to the fans and the fans to the industry. So we're certainly blessed to have been in this business.
It's so cool. Again, yeah, just for them to take it and run with it, and just one tweet after the next tweet.
Yeah.
And I get to hear it every week as I'm putting the show together. So the introduction song, or the little quotes that I run at the beginning,
Yeah.
go parallel with parts of the speech I borrow from the beginning and the end of it, basically. But one thing that you had mentioned I never really noticed until we talked about this in great length, which we did, in our first couple of months. We did a 2.5-hour podcast talking about the entire night, the whole tournament, the vibe of the the ECW arena, everything, how hot it was. We covered it literally from top to bottom. We basically we found out what kind of deodorant you had on that day. That's how in depth we went. But the thing that I really, really never noticed, but then after you said it, I did, is how when you go through the names, you said the fans were shouting out who they were going, and I never noticed it until you said it. And as I listened back this past week to the intro clip, you hear somebody go Harley, and then you go from the Harley races, and I just think that's the coolest thing.
Well, it is. It's I wish I could say I went out there and memorized all those names. I tried. I know them off. If you and I were sitting in the back talking, I could have certainly gone through those names. But at the end of that night, and being in that hot building and having those 3 tough matches, I just started going blank, and I was so blown up and just melting. And and I hate to use the word because it sounds so contrived, but just so organically, as if on cue, started throwing those names out, the exact names I was going to say anyway. Just when I watch it, I take a lot of pride in it, but the fans were a big part of that promo as well. And I still maintain that the kids today would do as well, if not better. And I'm betting that what we're going to see come out of that is up the shit with the teleprompter. I'm glad to hear AEW's not going to be doing it.
Yeah. No, you still there? You slowed up for a second. You still talking?
done. I wrapped up. I thought you look frozen. For
No,
a
yeah,
second,
you look
so.
frozen too. So that's why. Yeah, you're glad AEW's done with the teleprompter, and I completely agree with you. And that's when we talked about all this stuff with John Moxley 2 weeks ago. John Moxley's putting that to bed, and that is like a huge thing that he called
Good.
everything out that you and Vince talks about all the time, like just literally calling them all out on blast, being like, this stuff is over. These days of writing verbatim line for line for line. You can have writers. Writers serve a huge
Thank God.
factor in the show, but suffering
Sure.
succotash and pooper scooper and stuff like that, like it just doesn't belong. But that
Yeah.
moment, I mean, still, look, it's not just because we're doing the show with you. I always love that moment. And every time you say they can all kiss my ass, man, when that belt starts descending to the floor, and I said it on Twitter and I'll say it again, it started the revolution. That's why the franchise is still here, folks. He's still here and he's still doing his thing. And that's why this topic today is something I'm dying to hear you get a couple of current statuses in here, because you've encountered fans coming over the guardrail. You've
once or twice. Yeah.
you've gone to legal proceedings over fans coming over the guardrail. So it's this epidemic that they're kind of the fans and the wrestlers are getting to know each other a little bit more, I think, recently than anybody would kind of want them to. And I sent you kind of a short list of what's been going on lately.
Yeah.
Seriously, what goes through a fan's head when they're coming over that guardrail and they see you there? Is it just still that old school, we got to test these guys, see what it's all about, or are they looking to get themselves over?
Well, I think it's a combination of things. No, I don't think anybody coming over that railing today, and I may be wrong on this, but I don't think anybody coming over that railing, like those video clips that you sent. I think those fans believe they're part of the show. Like, hey, I'm playing my role here. I'm going to come over and get pulled to the back, and I think some fans think when they get back, they're going to get maybe a free T-shirt and a beer and sent back out or something. Back then, I haven't been on in the major leagues, to have it happen. But back then, when it happened, there were times you were literally fighting for your life. You didn't know if that fan had a knife or a gun or some kind of sharp object or whatever. I grew up hearing stories in the business of the old timers, where the ringside Rosies would, pull their hat pins out and poke the wrestlers or burn them with their cigarettes, things of that nature. And then later, Terry Funk told me the story of when I think it was in San Antonio when he got stabbed, was out fighting in the audience and got stabbed and didn't realize. And he said he took a couple more steps and thought he was pissing himself. And he looked down and realized his intestines were hanging out.
Jesus Christ.
So, when you hear stories like that, and then in that ECW arena where, you can imagine, look at from the fan standpoint, they've been sitting in this blistering hot building all night, drinking, and now they got a guy that they think they like to take a shot at. So I was never going to take a chance with it. There were multiple times that things that happened then, and thank God the world was a completely different place then. One time I remember I was wrestling Tommy Dreamer, and he went to throw me into the railing at ringside, and I reversed it, and he took a bump over the railing. And when I stepped on the bottom rung of the railing to reach over to grab him to pull him over. And when he did, my thumb was broken, I think, at the time. And when I went to grab him, I saw somebody pick a chair up, and in my head, I'm thinking, they're not going to hit me with that chair. And I looked up and bam, blasted me right in the face with the chair.
Oh my God.
Yeah, well, you can imagine, my temper. I know this is hard to believe because everybody that knows me knows how much inordinate amount of patience that I have, and what a calm person I am. So I jumped over the railing and went after this guy, and Tommy did his level best to try to protect him. He was like climbing up on the guy to cover him so I couldn't hit him. And as I was looking for the open shot, I saw it was like in slow motion. I saw something in there. I looked, and a bottle hit me in the mouth.
Oh my God.
And as soon as I looked, like 300 hands all went and pointed the guy out from every which direction. And I went over, and all you can see is me, just popping the guy over top of the crowd. Now, you do that today. It was stupid of me to do that then. You do that today, you're guaranteed a lawsuit. But that's the part, with our industry, we still have leftovers, fans from then that are bringing some of that vernacular with them, some of that paradigm, and thinking like, hey, this is my role to play the guy that doesn't like the heel. The one I saw of the guy groping the one female wrestler, I thought was totally uncool. I was always on the lookout for that kind of stuff happening with Francine, and we had a sort of unwritten rule that she stayed within a fair distance to me so that I could protect her if that would happen. But I don't know what's going on with these fans. On one hand, we're in such a politically correct world where groping a woman in public, especially that isn't your woman, is not very acceptable today. But the idea of, climbing over that railing to think you're going to become part of the show, understand, for the fans out there, please understand that these men and women make their living there, and they're not going to take the chance. They don't know if your intentions are to just be part of the show, or if your intentions are, watch the news any night. You're packing a gun or a knife or something, and they're not going to take that chance. I wouldn't take that chance. And if you come at me, you might be the biggest franchise fan in the world. You come over that railing and come at me, I've got no choice but to protect myself. Those railings are there for a reason. They're there to protect the fans from the action at ringside. They're also there to tell the fans, you stay over there and the action will stay over here. I don't know. I was shocked at some of those things that I saw in those videos that you had sent, because again, the world has changed so much. And I feel bad for the men and women that are doing it today, because if you would take that action, if Chad climbs over the railing to come get the franchise a high five and I knock your teeth out, it's a pretty good likelihood I'm going to get sued. And even if you win in the lawsuit, you're going to spend a lot of money, which I'm sure we'll get to in a minute, because the last link you sent me was the case from Downingtown. So, it was bad enough then, and like I said, a completely different world 25 years ago to where it is today. So I don't know. I think the security has got to be on their tiptoes today. To protect the wrestlers, protect the fans, and to protect the company. You have a company like AEW, some of the deep pockets. I got to believe there's going to be some fans thinking, hey, if I jump this railing and get my teeth knocked out, I might be able to get a few bucks from old Mr. Khan. So we need to really make sure that the security is doing their job. And any fan that does come over that railing has got to be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, not just to protect the wrestlers, but to protect the company and, most importantly, the other fans. Again, if one of those people coming over that railing has a weapon of some kind, it's not hard to imagine, somebody else getting hurt. If they swing a knife, for instance, and in those videos you sent, those people were pretty close to the audience. Swing a knife and miss and catch somebody in the audience, or God forbid have a firearm of some sort. Just pay your money, have your fun, scream and shout whatever you want. But the one video that you sent of somebody spitting on somebody, that the fans need to understand that's considered an assault. I don't know if you spit on me. I don't know if you have AIDS or hepatitis or something else. It's a form of assault. Just go have your fun. Let out all your angers and pent up fuel, whatever. Scream whatever words you want at somebody. Don't grope the women. Don't grab the women. Don't try to fight any of the guys. Don't jump over thinking you're being part of the show, because it's probably not going to turn out good for you.
No way. And the fact that I had to put 5 different examples into that email was scary enough, because if you really think about it, that's just 5 isolated incidents in the last couple of months. It really all started back with the Bret Hart weird Hall of Fame attack, where the psychopath came all the way from the cheap seats down to the main stage. For whatever reason, the WWE had an open guardrail for their Hall of Fame ceremony.
Yeah.
But that was kind of like the catalyst for this little trend that's gone on. I mean, we've had to have 5. One of them, it's a little tricky, because one of them, the Bully Ray incident, which I kind of want to get your take on, that's not necessarily a fan attack versus more it being the verbal clashing. Maybe the fan went too far. That could be something which, there's a fine line between, the quote, freedom of speech and trying to be part of the show.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that in a second. But for there to be 4 other instances and 2 of them to be including the female performers, it's kind of tricky to say. Like, you can't do that. And for you to have to basically protect a female every single night of the week, you don't know what the hell's coming out of those stands, whether it is, like you said, the spit, or it's a knife, or a pencil, for God's sake. It could be anything. When it comes to the female performers, you would think that the smarts would be there a little bit more readily than, say, a guy who had a couple too many beers and wants to try himself, stupidly getting in a ring.
Yeah, it's, again, just, when I watch the news today on almost a daily basis, I think I'm in like some sort of an alternate reality, because, you're hearing and seeing stuff that just seems so oddball, off the wall. But I don't think it takes a brain surgeon to figure out that you don't touch a woman, period, that isn't yours. And even then, I'm sure if you would grab your wife when she's not wanting you to, that you wouldn't get a very good reception there either. But certainly, if you walk down the street and grab some woman, you're going to have some serious trouble. I just, we want our fans to be involved. That's the first thing. We all work to get that engagement with the audience and that interaction with the audience. But there is a thing called common sense, and as everybody knows, I'm a big Kiss fan. I would dare say that Gene and Paul and Tommy and Eric probably wouldn't be very cool if during the middle of Rock and Roll Night I'd climb over the railing and jump on the stage and start trying to grab him or roll him up from behind like the idiot did with Brett or whatever. And I'm sure their security would probably be on me pretty quickly, like stink on shit, as they should be. But it's the one thing I can't for a split second believe is that somebody thinks that, hey, it says wrestling, so it's okay if I grope this smoking hot woman, and it's just going to be considered part of the show. So I think you're seeing a dumbing down to some degree. And I don't know if it's just that there's some, you still have a considerable number of people in the audience that come from that older day and that older paradigm. But like the one where you had, I think it was from AAA, with the female wrestler being, groped by a fan.
Yeah, that was Scarlett Bordeaux, or Bordeaux,
Yes.
however you say it.
Well, there's 2 points on this. If that was just a fan acting out of line, dumbass. And, if that were my girlfriend or my wife out there, I'd be out there crushing that guy. Secondly, if it was a set up spot with that wrestler, that talent, and a fan, even dumber. Because now what you've just done is you've taught the other guys to do it. And I'm not suggesting that was the case. But, we have this gray area between where some of the boys, and again, when I say boys, I mean everybody in the dressing room, will do that kind of thing and set up something with a fan, a plant, whatever. Both sides have to really think long and hard about what they're doing, because simply put, most of what I did as the franchise 25 years ago, I doubt I could get away with today. Not without some serious problems. A lot of what Bubba did, I think would cause some serious problems today. A lot of what most of the guys back then did would cause serious problems. So, again, it's a fine line. And the sad part about it is the vast, vast majority of the fans that go to shows and the interactions they have, you get a couple that get out of line and push it a little bit too far. But, when you stop and think about it, the 99.9% that are there are adhering to the rules. They're yelling at the guys they want to yell at. They're cheering for the guys they want to cheer for. They're not groping the women. They're not trying to fight the guys. But, it's certainly something that I think the industry has to step its game up on. Because if not, sooner or later, something bad is going to happen. And I mean, almost daily now it seems we're picking up, the newspaper, turning on the television or the computer, and seeing some story of somebody, some school shooting or something else. And I would dare say, if it can happen there, it's most likely going to happen inside an arena sooner or later.
Yeah, and in the one instance, Jacob Fatu, who's a part of the Samoan family, I mean, that was just stupid mistake number one. You're going to hop a guardrail around one of the Samoans? I don't think so.
Yeah, and if you're going to try, you better be a lot quicker than that guy was.
Yeah,
because,
exactly.
It's Jacob Fatu. He doesn't like anybody in that family. Doesn't look like he does not know how to take care of himself. So if you're going to be that stupid to do that, whatever you're drinking, you probably should take a few less of. But it's and the other part of it was when he got over that railing. Mr. Agile didn't seem like he was the most cat-like person, in the universe, and and he paid dearly for it. The part I love when he tries to get back up and thinks twice of it, and but you don't ever want to. It's funny to watch, but you don't ever want to see that happen, because just play this out. What if that guy would have hit his head on one of those light stanchions or rails behind him, or the legs for the stanchion, and ended up cracking his skull or something? He'd have the legalities of it would be one thing, but on top of that, then what about the health part of it? So again, people, think twice before what you're going to do. Have all the fun, scream whatever you want, but before you think of jumping that railing, because again, in Fatu's case, he had no idea that guy was coming over there with a knife, a gun, or something else. And he can't sit there and wait for that guy to show him if he's got something. You got to shit when you got to get. And that's exactly what he did. That's what any of the guys are going to do to protect themselves and anybody else who's at ringside with them. But again, I think the industry as a whole needs to step up its game. The one thing, and this will sound like a bit of a plug, and it's not, Atlas Security used to do a phenomenal job for us in ECW. With as much as we would push the envelope in ECW, I never felt in danger because I just knew that within a couple big 350-pound guys to protect the fans and everybody at ringside. So, maybe the industry needs to take some heads up from Atlas Security, but if not, sooner or later, something bad is going to happen with this. And I hope to God that in 50 episodes from now, we're not talking about some fan that got seriously injured because it's being so stupid, or some wrestler that's been harmed, or facing some multi-million-dollar lawsuit because of this. The company has a responsibility to keep the performer safe and the fans safe, and that's a hard thing to do when you have a lot of rowdy people in the building.
Yeah, and AEW actually is using Atlas Security, so that's kind of like a really smart move by them. Yeah, because I mean, when you have literally mountains of men, that are just as big or bigger than, well, now they're, forget about it. Now they are bigger than the wrestlers. So, I mean, that makes it kind of like the added stupidity if you're going to try to test anybody from Atlas. But if you break down, the other instances, so it was Fatu leveled the hell out of the guy. Taya Valkyrie had the one who spit on her. And then Scarlett Bordeaux had the one that groped her, and that was in Mexico. So now you're in a foreign country as well, having to deal with this instance. And, I'm not saying that that's commonplace, but you don't know if things are different there. I don't know. I've never wrestled in Mexico. I can't tell you that. But each individual incident was different. So that's why it kind of brings me to the Bully Ray thing, because that one's a little weird. Because, again, it's a fan who was kind of being a fan. He was maybe a little, maybe he had a couple in him. Maybe he had a little courage, and he was saying inappropriate things to the performers. And okay, it kind of goes with the territory, but maybe he crossed the line. We weren't there. But that whole scenario of them bringing him to the back and Bully kind of sitting down with him, if you were backstage, would you kind of tend to say to Bully maybe not to do that, just because this guy can make up 900 different stories saying Bully roughed him up, beat the shit out of him, taunted him, What would you tell Bully in that instance?
Well, I would tell him exactly what I would do, and that would be I'd let security handle it. Now that's the Shane Douglas sitting here today. I was a bit of a hothead back in the day.
No way.
Yeah,
No. Can't believe it.
I know that's hard to believe. But what the fan needs to understand is, and you're exactly right, and we'll get back. I'll circle back to that in a second. Bubba's one of those guys. Bully, Mark is one of those guys that gets very close and becomes very close friends with the people he's friends with. And if that performer, I'm guessing, was probably one of those people, Mark, like any good friend would do, was probably going to make sure he said his piece and straighten it out.
Well, it was Velvet Sky. I'm sorry to interrupt. It was Velvet Sky, so obviously he's dating Velvet Sky.
Well, there you go. So I'm sure that probably played into it as well. But I think point taken that I didn't see. I just saw in the clip it talked about the accusations this guy was making. I didn't see any of those. I didn't dig into it. I was, like I said, working on something else this week. But suffice it to say, it'd be very easy for that fan to come out there and say he hit him, he threatened him, he said something he shouldn't have said to him, he said he was going to kill him, whatever. And I'm not saying that Bubba did any of those things. I'm just saying that the fan can make, like you said, one of 900 accusations. And in today's world, it seems like that's pretty much all it takes to instigate a lawsuit. And I don't want to see Bubba or anybody else go through that. It's again with all these incidences, and since I don't watch as much as I used to, and I certainly don't get online and follow all this stuff as closely as you and JP do. But when I started seeing all those instances that were, all fairly recent, it tells me that we as an industry have got to do a much better job to make sure those fans realize that if they come over that railing, that they're going to be prosecuted, not just thrown out of the building. And that was what happened in the incident in Downingtown. That girl that had attacked us and hit Francine, and then later turned around, she was thrown out of the building instead of being arrested, which would have immediately put her on the defensive. But it allowed her to then go out and create whatever narrative she wanted to create, and that's exactly what she did. I hope that the industry hadn't forgotten the lessons from those type of instances from the past. But again, to make sure that in this crazy, crazy, crazy world, this insane world today, that a fan that was drunk and rowdy in the ECW arena 25 years ago, I didn't take as that serious of a threat for actual physical harm. Not that I didn't think it could happen, but I didn't think that would anybody push it that far. But again, every time I pick up the newspaper, turn on the computer, I read a crazy story about actresses being shot or followed or stalked, I guess you'd call it. Just a crazy different world today.
Yeah, and again, with ECW, I mean, you guys, there's how many stories are out there of you mess with one of us, you get the whole lot of us, you know. And when you got New Jack coming out, and you got Sabu jumping off of God knows what to have your back. I mean, it's really interesting, and I'm just for Bully's sake, he's very lucky that this hasn't escalated as far as he has, and he hasn't lost his position with Ring of Honor, which obviously is good, and he also works for Sirius XM. So I mean, none of that was impacted. So I guess in retrospect, he did the right thing. I guess from his perspective, he got his point across. I'm just glad nobody was affected long term by it. But we're talking about the incident with you in Downingtown, and at that point, again, you're the top bad guy in the company. So it's like, what's coming with the territory of being the top bad guy? And with this story per se, you kind of given a few little bits and pieces of it without going into the whole entire thing. And, obviously we don't want to put over the nut job. That was me saying it's not Shane. It was me saying that. But this girl who was involved with this thing, how do you approach the actual legality part of it, and in terms of how it plays into your character of the franchise? At that point, not exposing as much as we do now, how did you kind of walk that fine line of the business and what happened in the incident?
Well, first of all, the first rung of this, ladder for me was my job is to piss the audience off. So I'm not going to piss you off, and then when you get pissed off at me, beat you up for it. But as we were walking back in Downingtown, the room there was a very small room in the farmers market. There was like an exposition hall, but it was a very small room. And as ECW got more well known with the fans, that building started filling up pretty quickly. As a result, they had to take the aisle, which is typically 8 or 10 feet wide, to 6 feet. And then by that time, I think it was about 4 feet wide. So you could literally touch both railings on the entrance. In those types of buildings, in every building, Francine and I had a system, and Atlas Security had a system. The Atlas Security system was they had a phalanx around us. There was 2 guys to my front, right, and left, and 2 guys to my rear, right, and left. And Francine would walk behind me with her hand in the back of my tights. And I always said, if any trouble breaks out, just hang on, because I'll full back us to the dressing room. Well, Atlas's role, and I think their policy was that if something would happen, they were to bear hug us from behind. So pinning our arms down to our sides so that we couldn't even, if we wanted to, inadvertently hit somebody. And as we were walking back, keeping our head, I was keeping our heads down, but looking over my eyebrows to see what was coming. And I could see this girl, pretty good sized girl, we'll say, standing on her seat and leaning on the railing into the rail, and she had her fist pumped. So I knew what she was going to do. And as we got closer, I sort of walked, as far as I could to the left to not run into those people. And right as I walked past, she spat in my face. And when she spat in my face, I turned to look at her. She swung at me, and I instinctively just pulled my head back out of the way, and she missed me and clocked Francine.
Oof.
Well, as soon as that happened, Big Joe, who was about 6'7", bear hugged me from behind. At which point, some guy that was with her picked a chair up and smacked me in the face. And Franny's now being held. And Paul Heyman came out. I remember him and Taz and a bunch of other people, and pulled me by the hair back into the dressing room. And I won't lie to you, had I been able to get loose from them, I'd have killed her, or whoever it was that swung the chair at me. But by that time, it had de-escalated. We were back in the dressing room and safe. On the way back to the hotel that night, I get a phone call from our head ticket usher, and she said that the Pennsylvania State Police wanted to talk to me the next day. I had nothing to hide, so me and Francine and our head of security went down the next morning and met with this guy. He interviewed each of us separately, and within a matter of a week or so, I get served these papers for aggravated assault, which had a 12-year prison sentence to it. And I can laugh about it now. At the time, I was really pissed off because nobody had touched that girl. Secondly, they had attacked us, and again, where security made Mark Shapiro that night threw her out instead of having her arrested. And typically that would probably have solved the problem. But as we saw with this case, it didn't. And the odd thing was, by the time I went and hired an attorney, and the attorney hired I can't remember the guy's name. Jeff Abramson was the attorney. But he hired a former Secret Service agent that had walked with 5 presidents. And this guy was an expert at lie detector tests. So he administered a lie detector test, and afterwards said that he had never seen anybody pass one so convincingly, and that was because I was telling the truth. But what really stood out to us was that initially we thought we had a problem because they had 12 witnesses that said they saw me hit this girl. Well, I knew that wasn't even possible because I didn't even swing in her direction. My hands were pinned to my side. And, that I could tell both my attorney and this guy were half not believing me, because how can there be 12 witnesses saying this and you're saying it didn't happen? Until he went and started interviewing those witnesses. And I wish I had the state cop's name, because I'd use it on the air right now. In fact, I'll try to find it and I'll post it up on the Twitter site just to make sure that he gets the nice feedback that he should get. He had changed those 12 witness statements. Those 12 witnesses all told our investigator that they told the police that I did not hit that girl. And that police officer changed all those statements to read that I did hit that girl.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and when I wanted to go back after the state police afterwards, my attorney was adamant that would not be a good idea, and would not do that. Didn't want any part of that case, which sort of shows you the problem with how the system is set up. So for all the young talent out there, take that as the lesson that, if the police want to come and do something, thank God I had the resources at the time that I could hire that guy because he wasn't cheap, and that he had the time and the desire to go out and recheck those witness statements. Because who in their right mind is ever going to believe that a state cop is going to change 12 witness statements? And yet that's exactly what happened. So thankfully, I was obviously bound over for trial. And when we went to the hearing afterwards, I remember the magistrate in Downingtown admonishing the girl, and telling her that she had better never see her in that courtroom again. She apologized to me, the magistrate did. And, it was a scary time, because again, the world ain't nearly as crazy then as it is now. But still, when you're being held up for a potential 12-year prison sentence, you kind of take notice of that. And, afterwards, we overhauled the policies then. For me, it was if anybody got within 5 feet of me, Atlas was to take them down and not let them anywhere near me. But, again, it's a completely different world today. And my guess would be that if that same thing would happen today, I'm not so certain that I'd get so lucky as to find the investigator that I had that was able to uncover that. And shocking to me that a Pennsylvania State Police sergeant at the time, I don't know what he is now. Like I said, I'm going to find his name to make sure that the fans out there can give him the thumbs up that he so well deserves. You know what I mean? The thumbs up.
Yeah,
piece of shit.
That
worthy of wearing the badge.
Yeah, that's terrible. But I'll tell you what, if it was today, the only thing you'd have going for you is that you'd have 24 people with their phones right in your face. So the proof would be in the pudding because people would have that recorded right in front of you, and you'd be able to be like, well, there's those witness statements that you go wipe your ass with. Here's all of the video footage that's been tweeted or texted or whatever you can do with it these days. And that's the only benefit that we kind of get to see because, look, if we didn't see the video footage of what happened to these folks, I mean, look, we don't know that somebody gets spit on or somebody got groped. It's all hearsay, but there's video of it.
Correct.
And in that case, back in, the mid 90s, you guys, if you were recording the show, great. You have your proof. If Rob Feinstein was there with his fan cam, you might have an angle of it from somewhere. But how does Paulie kind of treat this situation? Does Paulie does he kind of walk you through all this other stuff, afterwards with it? Does he kind of have your back, or does he just wash his hands of it?
No, he pretty much washed his hands of it. Look at it from his point of view. He has, like in my case, he's got a heel that's got a ton of heat, which traditionally in the business draws money. So the last thing you want to do is go out there and put a damper on that and say, hey, tone it down. Don't get the fans so worked up. Because what's too much, what's too little. So I understand from that point of view. But there was another case in Allentown that happened, and where a fan attacked me. And that night, later in the evening, Rob Van Dam had gotten attacked, and so Paul had erased all the tapes. So there was no evidence of anything.
Wow.
So in that case where the video footage would have benefited me, I got screwed because it had to protect somebody else. But you're right though. Like today, that's one good thing, and I'm guessing that a lot of that footage we saw came from fan cams or something that were around those different buildings.
Yeah, I think they did. I think that there was some that really came from that, instant ringside fan who's got his phone out, which I'm not sure if you're supposed to be recording these things, especially if they're broadcast for television. And at some of the outlaw shows, that might be a different story. But no, it's amazing how the time kind of shifts. And, if that was today, you'd be in a completely different spot, not having to worry about that 12-year prison sentence, which do you think they could put the zebra stripes in your franchise colors? Your franchise colors there.
they'd have to, because I would flat out refuse to wear black and white pinstripes. I mean, whoever, black and white ain't cool, but gold and black, everybody knows is cool as hell.
An orange jumpsuit, you may be confused with a member of Team Taz. You don't want that. We don't want that to happen.
Or a certain wrestler that had a one-on-one conversation with Vince, one Kevin Kelly Nails.
Yeah, we talked about that on a show about a year ago. We talked about the Nails incident with Vince, and that Vince, whenever Vince sees the color orange outside of Taz, I don't think anybody's ever had that. Maybe that's why you had the blue, because he kind of shies away from the orange.
Yeah, I don't think orange is. It's probably why Taz did get a big push up there. Now that I think about
it, yeah, he signed Taz. This is what happened. He signed Taz. He had like black on, and then when he got there and Taz had the orange, he was like, "Well, I was gonna push this guy to the moon, and we're gonna pull the reins back a little bit." Because hey, one thing you give Taz has one of the best debuts in the history of the WWE. Oh, yeah. That place that Matt, and I know JP was there. I mean, and like the roof exploded off of Madison Square Garden, that first beat of the Taz theme. So it's a shame.
Yeah. Is that the night he wrestled Kurt Angle?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Had an incredible match with Kurt, and I remember talking to Taz afterwards about that, and like why he was suddenly moved to announce and everything, which obviously worked out for the longer part of his career. But he said that, and I think I've seen interviews with Vince saying as much, where he said he just didn't buy Taz. And I thought, I don't recall one time any fan in ECW saying, "I can't believe you're backpedaling from a guy that size." I can't. When the triple threat would back down, when you got Bam Bam Bigelow, the beast from the East, standing right next to them, the three of us would back down. Excuse me, not one time did a fan ever say, "Come on, guys, look how big he is." Taz was an unbelievably believable character and played that character so well. As a heel, it was so easy to play off of. But that again, there's that genius at work.
Yeah, it's crazy because when you watch ECW back in that 95, 96, 97 time, when you guys, it was so cool, especially like when you and Taz ended up having your program down the road, how really everybody was kept separated, and you thought that like Taz was okay. Well, Taz really could destroy everybody on the roster, so you don't want to get him in the ring with the franchise. But you know what? The franchise is the dirtiest guy we have here, so maybe I do want to see that. But maybe I want to see. You notice how like it was always kept so perfectly separated from everybody. You weren't wrestling Sabu in the in the 95, 96 era. You were tied to Dreamer, and Dreamer was tied to Raven, and Taz was tied to Sabu. I just loved how everybody was kept so separate. Yeah. And Vince, he could have done that with Taz, but man, he jobbed him out after like 6 months.
Sure. And then, this other part of it is like, before WrestleMania, I remember seeing the picture of, Charlotte and the other two that were, the day before, all nicely dressed and sitting there, hugs and smiles and kisses. And, here we are the day before WrestleMania. Why? Absolutely why. I don't think that does anything to improve the fans' experience. If anything, it detracts from it. Let the heels be the heels. Let the baby faces get the adulation. But there's no reason in the world that there should be a picture of me and Taz the day before our big battle, dressed in suits and arms around each other and smiling. It's befuddling to me.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, like the kayfabe being one thing and that being somewhat dead in a certain realm. I just don't get why, especially on social media. Look, everybody can have their own individual account. Go put it under your real name. But if you've got an account that's tied to your company or whatever, you should not be thanking the guy who you just had a match with, you just killed in the middle of the ring. Shouldn't be thanking him. You shouldn't be posting the pictures. You shouldn't be sharing your hey. Oh, the best was a few years ago in the middle of Roman Reigns and Braun Strowman were having this blood feud, and Strowman's throwing Reigns in dumpsters and ambulances and turning stuff over. And then like 3 days later, it was like a group of guys and they were standing in front of like the Coliseum. And it's like, okay, guys, if you were going to the Coliseum, like just share it in between. Yeah. Have a group text. Why don't you?
Yeah, exactly. It's just, we work so hard to build personas and angles and storylines. And then we go out, and I know the the comeback. Well, it's a TV show today. We don't kayfabe anymore. And to me, I don't think the fans really believed so much back then that Taz and I despised each other. We're going to try to kill each other or anything. But, like I said before, when you go to see the movie Halloween, and I always use Halloween because that was such ingrained in my head when I was a young kid, the first time I went to see that in the theater. And like I've often used the example, if they're sitting in the theater with your big bucket of popcorn and your Coca-Cola, and the lights go down, and John Carpenter, the writer and director, comes up on the screen and says, "Hey, everybody, my name's John Carpenter. I've written and directed this movie Halloween. I want to thank you for coming. I want you to know that nobody is being harmed in this movie. All the blood you see is just Karo syrup with food coloring in it. It's stage blood. Enjoy the movie." The rest of the time, you'd be laughing at all the stuff instead of cringing and on the edge of your seat. There's no reason to blow the kayfabe. You spend all that time creating Halloween, the movie, the characters, and the eeriness and the music and all of that goes with it, and then you just flush it down the drain, or would have, with that kind of an intro from John Carpenter. So in our business, it's a performance art. Why do we go out there and work so hard to set all these parameters and get all these things set up just right, and then right before and say, "Here's me and Taz the day before the big battle, having a beer together"? It's just stupid as fuck.
So bad. So bad. But hey, look, different time back in the fact that you said Taz came out and pulled you by the hair, got you out of Dodge in the incident. Hey, that was enough right there that he came out to save you. And that was probably the most. And I bet you if we were to see that footage, that would be tape traded footage all over the thing. This is the time that Taz came out and pulled Shane Douglas to the back. And it meant so much different back then. It's, man, I really, as an old school fan, I wish we still had a part of that. And that's why we hold on to your guys, your generation so tightly.
Thank you. And let's hope that what AEW has promised us, they hold up to. When they're talking about giving us the wrestling that we watched 20 years ago, and the no teleprompters and stuff. Because I think that with the roster that they have a real opportunity to make some real magic there. And especially, as we've talked about the WWE's rating slide and the rest of it, the parameters have really lined up perfectly for a competitor right now. So if they go out there and they do those things, I have no doubt that Jon Moxley can create magic on the camera, as long as he's not talking about pooper scoopers. Give him the opportunity to say what he wants. And along the line, he'll say something that's dumb. I certainly did plenty of times. He'll say something, things that, afterwards you might say, "Don't ever use that one again," because that's happened to me plenty of times. But after he's gone through that process and he's made those mistakes and he learns from those mistakes, my guess is on the other side, sans a teleprompter, you're going to see guys like Moxley and the rest of the crew there create some incredible magic. And I, for one, as the mark in me, is dying to see it.
Let's see. A couple months down the road, we're almost there. We'll see what they can do when they get to television. But we'll kind of wrap it up there for the week, Shane. That was a great topic because I know it's something that you have a lot of experience with, and that's
a little bit.
That's fighting the marks. That's when the marks want to think they're part of the show. We'll kick their ass. But yeah, no, that was a great topic, and glad we could dig into that this coming week. But hey, before we do, I'm just going to reach over here. Not only am I wearing this shirt in black, but how about this guy, huh? Right here. There he is.
Gold and black and black and gold.
There it is. I'll try to get in with it at the same time. You save that for your scrapbook. But yeah, look, if you want to get a part of this triple threat, you want to be a part of the team, go to ProWrestlingTees.com/thefranchisesd and get your hands on a triple threat podcast, a franchise Shane Douglas classic logo t-shirt. Every little bit supports the show. It supports the franchise. It supports everybody, what we're doing here. And we appreciate anything that you could do because you know what? You might be the coolest guy on the beach if you're wearing the gold franchise Shane Douglas t-shirt. And Shane, I got to tell you, I was looking through my phone here trying to find the tweet. There was a guy who was actually looking for an image of your tattoo, wanting to duplicate your triple threat tattoo that you have with all your triple threat brethren. And, I know there's a t-shirt out there, but I don't think it's seen the light of day. in quite a while. So that's one thing. You got to get your hands on these T-shirts now, especially the classic one. Because Shane, I mean, when you got a big F on your chest, you really could do whatever you want when you walk down that street.
Yeah. Well, back to the tattoo for a second. I do know that the Figures Toy Company figure that's out now. It has. I sent the artwork to them, so the tattoo on that action figure is an absolutely spot on correct remake of the tattoo. So if you can't find it, let me know. We'll get a picture of it to you.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really cool. And hey, I pitched it to my wife. I said, we got this thing going with the show. We got the three of us. There's this tattoo floating around.
Yeah, you got to get it.
It's still for debate, but I know JP and I, we've bandied back and forth about it many times that we want to be a part of the team permanently, and maybe that's exactly what needs to happen sooner or later. That would make for an interesting episode of the podcast. We'll let JP go first, though.
Yeah. We'll let him try the needle first.
Exactly. And we miss him, and he'll be back next week. And what his role is going to be on the video show is to tell you what's going on the two-man power trip. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. We just had our 400th episode last week with Arn Anderson.
Very cool.
And this past episode that just published this week, we had on for our Dusty Rhodes tribute show, Dustin Rhodes. And it was a highly, highly emotional interview. How can you deny Dustin sitting here talking about Dusty, his father, and the detail that he did? You're not going to find it anywhere else, especially this week. And also covering what he did in AEW with Cody. And I don't know if you followed it much, Shane, but Cody dialed back to a promo that Dusty did with Dustin back in your time in WCW called The View Never Changes. And Dustin talks in depth about that promo and what it meant from both sides, from Cody doing it and also from Dusty doing it. So it's a great episode. And really, how can you go any bigger than that for a Dusty Rhodes tribute show?
Yeah, no, I mean, I imagine, I've often wondered when you look at like those second generation guys, I remember when I was breaking in David Sammartino and then later meeting and working with David Flair, who was just a really, really nice kid. And, guys like Dustin and Cody, living in the shadow of, these huge, larger than life, iconic, historic, legendary names in our business, right? I mean, it was a hard enough industry to break into, period, let alone with that happened to come out from under that kind of a shadow. But also to have grown up knowing that guy and being able to talk to that guy and hear that guy and watch his thinking process. In our business, just, Dominic taught us way back in the day, keep your mouth shut and eyes and ears open. Well, for Cody and Dustin, that was a front row seat on a night-to-night basis. But it's tough to lose your parents as they found out, unfortunately. But to have that legacy, to especially in this business now, to feed off of, play off of, because what wrestling fan doesn't know Dusty Rhodes? There's not a single one on the planet, and that they have that to play into in those old promos and just the whole history. Dusty was a walking almanac of this business, and he's forgotten more about character development and storyline than 99.9999999% of the people that are ever worked in it. So, for them, I'm sure it's a hell of a resource and going to be a hell of a resource for AEW to invoke.
Yeah, highly emotional episode. Please check it out wherever you get your podcasts, on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and we gotta tell everybody to go to the Podomatic app where you can get all the episodes of the two-man power trip. Next week, we've got another big episode coming. I don't know. I got to talk to JP if we're going to reveal them every week ahead of time. So I'm going to just keep it in the bag. Just stay tuned on Tuesday when we publish it, and you'll see a huge current WWE superstar joining us this current week. Somebody well, Shane. So you'll be interested.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're gonna wrap it up here, nice, before we lose the franchise. We get disconnected. Knock on wood. We've done very good for this episode. So Shane, before we wrap it up, just tell everybody where you're gonna be out there in the wrestling world this coming weekend.
This Saturday, I'm gonna be back down in New Orleans and gonna give my good friend Luke Hawks another round with the franchise and a few tricks up my sleeve. Looking forward to getting back down there. It's been quite a while since I've had a good bowl of gumbo and been able to play some tricks on my friend Luke Hawks again. So going to be down there on Saturday, and then Sunday going to be taking an early morning flight and getting up to Toronto. Have a private shining there, and then a match as well. And I'll have all that information posted up on my Twitter tomorrow. The New Orleans shot is already posted on Twitter. I'll repost again tomorrow, and then the Sunday shot in Toronto, I'll have that information posted as tomorrow as well.
Yeah, I saw the private signing ad the other day on Facebook. So curious to see how those guys are. So we'll have to talk off air about how that one goes. I love that. So if you don't know, and you'll hear us talk about it here on the brand, you'll hear us talk about all the conventions and the signings, very tied into the autograph and memorabilia world. So whenever I see a company like that pop up, I'm always intrigued. It always kind of raises the old eyebrow under the hat, raises the eyebrow like the Rock would, like the Rock would do. But Shane, hey, another great one here. We'll head out to episode 98 next week. We have a theme in mind for episode 99. So we'll talk about that and kind of tease that for the next episode. But, hey, take us out in only the way the franchise can and get us out of here of 97 and get us to 98.
Episode 97 under the belt, only number 2 on video. You can get it here now. Vince Russo's The Brand and At the Realm. Don't miss it now. Make sure you tune in next week for number 98 as we barrel down to 100. Do that or get your ass franchised.
The preceding presentation was brought to you by the Realm Network.